Toiru, toiru agdoi Yeshu, ischaneni.
This week is Parshas Mishpotim, and on Parshas Mishpotim there's so much to talk about, but bearing in mind that I'm speaking in a yeshiva, then why speak about Dinei Nazikin or Dinei Shoimrim or Dinei Eved Ivri if we could speak about Mitzvah Tefillah, which is in this week's Parsha. Va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem uberach es lachmocho ve'es meimecho, and the Gemara in Bava Kama Tzadik Beis va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem zu kriya shema v'tfilo. And in Tanis the Beis Amid Aleph the Gemara says la'avde b'chol avavchem ezui avoide shebelev zu tfilo. So the Rambam and the Ramban have a machloikis whether tefillah is a mitzvah d'oraisa or not. The Gemara in Brochus Chavav Itmar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina mit tefillas Oves Tiknum. The Oves Hagdoshim Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they're the ones that were metaken tefillos. Tanya Kavos said Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina, Avraham tikkun Shachris, Yitzchak tikkun Mincha, Yaakov tikkun Arvis, and the Gemara brings various psukim from which we learn that the three Oves Hagdoshim were metaken the tefillos. So this Gemara seems to indicate that Tefillah is a Darabonon of Weiss Tiknum. So the Oves Hagdoshim were far, far before the Tkufa of the Mishnah, but if the Oves were metaken Tefillah, would that be Min HaTorah or Midarabonon? Min HaTorah comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and not at the corner of the Avos. The Rambam, source number 2, Hilchos Tefillah v'Berchos Kohanim, yesh b'chlolon shtei mitzvahs, achas lavet es Hashem b'kol yoim b'tfilo shene'emar, v'shenis chayovim mevorchem b'kol yoim, and the Rambam, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, brings us to source number 3, mitzvahs asay le'espalel b'kol yoim shene'emar v'adam es Hashem Elokeichem. So obviously, when the Gemara says Avos Tiknum, it means that the three specific tefillas, Shachris, Mincha, Marav, are at the corner. Min HaTorah, le'espalel b'kol yoim. So let's go through the halacha in source number 3. Mitzvah sasei le'espalel b'kol yoim shene'ema v'yavadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. Me'piesh mi elamdu. Shavoide zuhi tefilo, shene'emar la'avde b'chol avavchem. Omer chachom meis avoide shelev zu tefilo. But then the Rambam writes, ve'ein minyan ha-tfilas min ha-Torah, ve'ein mishnah tefillah min ha-Torah, ve'ein letefillah zman kavua min ha-Torah. Min ha-Torah you need to say any tefillah. You choose what to say, how to say, when to say. Whatever you daven is mitzvah tefillah min ha-Torah. The Oves came along, and they were metaken to daven 3 times a day. Avraham Shachris, Yitzchak Mincha, Yaakov Arvis. That is not Min HaTorah. But Min HaTorah, when, how, what, depends on you. But you need to daven every day. The Ramban disagrees with the Rambam, as we see in source number 4. Kvara'inu behilchas tefillah she'omar, that the Rambam says shechayev odem min HaTorah b'tefillah b'kol yom, elu she'minyan ha-tefillas v'lo mishnah tefillah min HaTorah. וכך כוסף בזה המאמר במצווה סירס שזמן התפילה אינו מן התורה. אבל חייבס התפילה מן התורה. וגם זה איננו נוכן בעיניי. The Ramban disagrees. שבעל קרי מבורך על המוזים, מפני שמן התורה ואינו מספרל. מי שנאנס ולא יספרל שחרס ובמנחה, נסתפק בעצמי סופק יספרל, סופק לא יספרל. So, לדברי הרב, צריך לחזור ולספרל. But the Gemara says, I think the Rambam answered these questions when he writes, Zman HaTefillah is not Min HaTorah, Mishnah Tefillah is not Min HaTorah, Minyan Tefillah is not Min HaTorah. So Min HaTorah, when you said Birchas HaMazon, you were Yoytze Tefillah. you don't need to daven anymore. You are yoytze Tefillah the Berachas Hamazon. So what's the kasha? Bal keri mevorach Berachas Hamazon, that's min haTorah. He doesn't daven. Because the chiyuv min haTorah to daven, you are yoytze mit Berachas Hamazon. Sofek ispalel, sofek lo ispalel, einoi tzorech lachzav ele ispalel. We assume that when he got up in the morning, he said, Moidani lefonecha melachai v'kaim shechzarto b'neshmos, he was already yoytze min haTorah. So all the sources that Ramban would quote to prove that Tefillas D'Rabbanan, these sources all deal with Tefillas Ha'amida, with Shmoina Esrei. That is definitely Midrabbanan. The Rambam clearly says, Minyan HaTefillas Mishnah HaTefillah. Mishnah HaTefillah means Nusach HaTefillah. Zmanei HaTefillah, all these are the Rabbanan. Min haTorah, as I said before, whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, you're yoytze min haTorah. So this is a fundamental machlokes. The Ramban, how does he explain the posuk v'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem? According to the Ramban, it is a mitzvah klolis. You need to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all your heart. La'avdoi b'chol avavchem. Not a specific way, not a specific mitzvah. La'avdoi b'chol avavchem. V'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem refers to the entire package of Taryag mitzvahs. Primarily, Reish Mem Ches mitzvahs asay. That is v'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem. Serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. With tefillah, of course, but not only with tefillah, with the entire package of mitzvahs haTorah. And the mitzvahs hakloliyos, that means, in many psukim in Torah's Moshe, Kadosh Baruch Hu admonishes us once and again and again and again to observe all the mitzvahs, to keep the Torah. Those are mitzvahs kloliyos. They're not in the list of Taryag mitzvahs. So according to the Rambam, V'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem refers to one specific form of avodah, and that is tefillah. According to the Ramban, no, this avodah is everything, the entire spectrum of Taryag mitzvahs, including tefillah as well. Now, I said many times, and before we go to the hiyoംהשחור, what I say is similar to the hiyoംהשחור, but more encompassing. And I ask, so is tefillah, according to the Ramban, not that important? Not as important as it is to the Rambam? Is it possible that according to the Ramban, a person went through all his life and never talked to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's a good Jew? He never asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu for anything. Obviously he felt, well, I'm a talented person. I can make it on my own. Chas v'sholom. I don't really need HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have nothing to ask from him. He never said thank you. Never. And he's a good Jew, according to the Ramban. So you might ask, whoa, no, but he says Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is not talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kriya Shema is Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shemayim. Kriya Shema is not one word of Shevach, not one word of gratitude, and not asking for anything. But Berachas Hamazon is min haTorah, only if I ate pas. And if a person goes through all his life without eating bread and he never says Berachas Hamazon, is that okay? Berachas haTorah is midioraisa? Yes, I agree. So there is something. But it's only Berachas haTorah? So I say, according to the Ramban, tefillah is midioraisa. So anybody that's familiar with the Minchas Osher, either with the Mechaber or with the Sefer, knows that one of the topics I speak about a lot is Rotzain HaTorah, or rather Rotzain HaKadosh Baruch Hu as expressed in Torah. We all know there are Taryag mitzvahs, quite a big package, quite a tough package. So I want to encourage you or discourage you, it depends how you look at it. There are far more than Taryag mitzvahs, many more. Taryag mitzvahs is not all there is. Tzar Barachayim Dioraisa. But if you check all the Sifrei HaMitzvahs, and could anybody try to give me the list? How many Sifrei Mitzvahs are you familiar about? You know, we all know Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Rambam and the Ramban with his comments. Who knows? How many Sifrei Mitzvahs are there? What were the first ones? What were the first ones, the earliest ones? Chinuch? No. It's one of the important ones, but it's not one of the earliest ones. Two Sefer Mitzvahs were written in the Tkuf of the Goinim. Reb Sadi Goin, and the most famous one, that the Rambam comments, the Rambam doesn't bring it, Sadi Goin ever, Halachas Gedailos. We don't know exactly who wrote the Halachas Gedailos. It is accepted Rav Yehudai Goin, but it's not entirely clear. So Halachas Gedailos and Reb Sadi Goin were the earliest two. And then, the Rambam and the Ramban, three Balei HaTosis wrote Sifrei Mitzvahs. Who are they? Smag, Sefer Mitzvahs Godel, Reb Moshe Mekutzi. Sefer Mitzvahs Koton, Reb Yankov Mikurbel, he was in France. So why is he called Sefer Mitzvahs Koton while the Smag is Sefer Mitzvahs Godel? For three reasons. Because the name Sefer Mitzvahs Godel was already taken. So, if there's a big one, let there be a small one. The Smag is actually smaller than the Smag, because the Smag, like the Rambam writes about all the Taryag, the Smag only wrote about mitzvahs hanoagot bizman hazeh. And he skipped all the mitzvahs that are no longer relevant, the mitzvahs of the Beis HaMikdash and others. So the Smag, as a predecessor to the Tur, only talks about the Sefer Mitzvahs that are noeg bizman hazeh. Smag, and Yereim, Rebbe Elazar Memetz. There were three Balei HaTosis that wrote Sifrei Mitzvahs. Reb Shlomo Ibn Gibirol was known as a great poet, and he wrote Azharos. That is how we called his Sefer. And then the Sefer HaChinuch, Reb Aaron Alevi. And the last was the Tashbetz and Sefer Zohar Harakia, which is actually an addition to the Azharos of Reb Shlomo Ibn Gvirol. So none of the Moinei HaMitzvahs counts Tzar Barachayim. None of them. Neither in the Mitzvahs Aseh and the Mitzvahs Lo Ta'aseh. So why is that? Because Tzar Barachayim Dioraisa. And in Minchas Osher I wrote 11 different sources. How do we know Tzar Barachayim is Dioraisa? The most fascinating one is the Rambam in Moirei Nevuchim. The Rambam writes, how do we know Tzar Barachayim Dioraisa? From the Parsha of Bilam. Kodesh Baruch Hu sends an angel to give Bilam over the head, and he asks him, Alma hekiso es asoinchu ze sholosh regolem. Why did you hit your mule 3 times? What does the Kodesh Baruch Hu care that a crazy guy hits his mule? He cares. This proves that Tzar Barachayim Dioraisa. So how do we define the posuk Alma hekiso es asoinchu ze sholosh regolem? Is that a mitzvah aseh or a mitzvah lo ta'aseh? Neither a mitzvah aseh or lo ta'aseh, because it's not a command. It's not lo yiseichlu kol nevela. It's not v'dibarto bam. It's not shomres yoyim Shabbos lekatshoi. It's not a tzivui. It's not a command. It's a story. It's a story. A malach came and he talked to Bilam. But it's a dioraisa. So many mitzvahs are not included in the list of Taryag because they weren't given as a command, but rather as a story. But they're still midioraisa. So what I argue is Tefillah is menatoira according to the Ramban, but it's not in the list. So how do we know it's menatoira? For the mere fact that Avram, Yitkin Shachas, and Yitzchak and Yaakov, from whom do we learn how to be a good Jew? And Moshe Rabbeinu davened. Or the Marishan, the Medrash said Mizmashili Yom Shabbos. So he davened. If all of them davened, Odom Arishan and Noach and Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, from whom do we learn how to be a good Jew? So, according to the Ramban, Tefillah is no less important than according to the Rambam. But according to the Rambam, it's in the list because it's a command. According to the Ramban, it's not in the list. But it's still important. Hiuःhשחור doesn't define it as well as the Minchas Osher, but he makes the same point. Nelan is daiti. Source number 5. Dafilu Ramban ain't a kavana de ikar chiyuv de Rabbanon u'min haTorah lekar chiyuv klal le'esparal ve'ein ze svara klal. Shoim de ein ze nechshav b'minyan hamitzvos v'dino kekol dina de Rabbanon desveiken lakulo. However, you need to daven. V'ze'etzli k'mo shekos Ramban atzmo el Shavus Shabbos. He compares it to Shavusim b'Shabbos. So the Shavus are monim de Rabbanon. But the Ramban writes, even in a Torah, Shabbos needs to be different. And you can't sit in your store all day Shabbos and work as if it's a work day. So the Ramban says, the Loisas Loisasaka Malacha refers to Lametes Malachas, but the Mitzvah say Shabbosoin demands Sheloi Yehei Shabbos Kechoil. And that includes the Shavusim. I think this comparison is somewhat faulty. Because in Shabbos there is a mitzvah to say, Tishbois. So the Ramban explains that Tishbois is not the same as Loisasa Kol Melacha. Tishbois is more inclusive. But by Tefillah we don't have another posuk. But the Hiuःhשחור is just looking for some source. What troubles him is, as I said before, it's impossible to assume that a good Jew never talked to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, never asked him for anything, never thanked him for anything. Totally unreasonable. So to me, it is Rotzoin Hashem. And how do we know it's Min HaTorah? From Avraham, from Yitzchak, from Yaakov, from Odom Arishan, from Moshe Rabbeinu, all of them davened Lifnei Shenitnu Torah. And therefore, it is Min HaTorah, but it is not in the list of the Taryag. Coming back to the Rambam. The Rambam says, source number 2 and 3, Lavoid es Hashem bekol yom b'tefillah. Mitzvah aseh litparel bekol yom. And how do we know bekol yom? V'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem la'ovda b'chol avavchem. It's not written bekol yom. How does the Rambam know bekol yom? Lechem Mishnah and Kesef Mishnah have two different approaches. Let's see the Lechem Mishnah. Mitzvah aseh litparel bekol yom. יש לעין, למה לא התחיל בהלכס קריאה שמע, מיססה לקריאה שמע, כמו שהתחיל כאן בהלכס תפילה, ויש לא אמר, כדי תלת סייפך הרעידה, מיסס ייחוד חייב עוד המליחד בכל רגע, ולכן לא יחשוב על האחס ממיסס התשע בתואר לבד. ועוד קושר, מנין לא מכאן דהבה בכל יום, ובעל קריאה ספר כוסף לתרץ. Does anybody know who was the Kiryai Sefer? There are two Sforim called Kiryai Sefer. Does anybody know who they are? Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zecher Tzaddik Avrocha has a Sefer Kiryai Sefer. Is he the one the Lechem Mishnah is quoting? Yes? How do you know? Because the Lechem Mishnah was a Sephardi and Reb Chaim Kanievsky is an Ashkenazi, so probably he isn't quoting him. The Mabit, Reb Moshe Mitrani, the father of the Marit, living in the days of the Beis Yosef 500 years ago, he is quoted by the Lechem Mishnah. And he says, Mishum dechsiv avadetem es Hashem ve'ein avoideh letfilo b'sefer dekro u'bereches lachmo v'esmamecho lechem v'mayim tzorach b'kol yom im ken atfila gam ken b'kol yom Ofer ve'efer ani tachas kapois laglov. But it is somewhat a chiddush that the Rambam medated the nafshei is mechadish. This seems like a drosha. וברוך אצלך מלכות שמחך בכל יום, then probably ועבדתם בכל יום. This should be said by Rabbi Kiva or Rabbi Shmuel, by Rav or Shmuel or Rabbi Yochanan or Reish Lakish. It's not the derech of the Rambam to be mechadish et drosha. Kesef Mishnah. Das Rabbeinu shemitzvah say min haTorah l'smala b'kol yom. ועבוד זאת צריכה שתהיה בכל יום. שאם אינו בכל יום, אולי נו ולא מישהו פעם אחס בכל ימי חי, וזה ממש שלא יסבל הוא הדס. ואם כאן הכוח הכי הוא לספלה בכל יום. So the Kesef Mishnah seems to be suggesting a process of elimination. Do you know what that means, a process of elimination? How do we know B'kol Yom? Because what would be the other option if not B'kol Yom? Then when? Once in a lifetime? Doesn't make sense. There is no other mitzvah that a person needs to be mekayim once in a lifetime. If that is the argument, I would say, maybe a Seres Yemei Tshuva. Maybe. If we need to guess when, who says that it's either B'kol Yom or once in a lifetime? Maybe a Seres Yemei Tshuva. That is the time. Kadosh Baruch Hu judges the world. That is the time to ask what you need. That is the time to ask for forgiveness. Maybe Pesach and Sukkot is the time for gratitude, when we remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. So I would be able to suggest maybe some other ideas. Who says it's either B'kol Yom or once in a lifetime? Nere la'anir zdaiti. Ofa va'efer ani tachas kapes regleim, but kachi da'ako shel Torah. And I would say this. Many times, and this is a theme I speak about again and again and again, and in the years I've been here in the yeshiva, probably I spoke about this 100 times. There are two fundamentally different categories in mitzvahs asay. Some of the mitzvahs asay are just to achieve a result. It's not about the actual deed, but about the result, about the outcome. Lemoshel, v'osisu maka legagecho. If you use a roof and it's dangerous, you need to make a makkah. The Torah clearly says, why? Pen yipel anoifel. You're so close to tragedy. Person could fall and get killed. Lo tosem domem beveisecho. V'osisu maka legagecho. So it's not about avodas Hashem. It's just to prevent tragedy. Many other mitzvahs are purely avodas Hashem. Kriyas Shema. There is no result. There's no practical result. It's about avodas Hashem. So the most striking example I always give, it is somewhat amusing, but it makes things very clear. There's a mitzvah that say, uve'arta horo mikirbecho. Daled Mises based in, and that is a mitzvah to say. So this guy got a new job. He was looking for a job sometime. He couldn't find a job. He applied. He got the job to execute people. That's his job. He took a special course in the university, and he's very good at it. And he does Daled Mises based in, Skila Sefer Herek Chenig. And every day he goes to his office. 2 weeks. He calls his wife. Things are terrible. Things are awful. For the past 2 weeks, I have nothing to do. I come to my office. I finish Tillim every day. It's been a while since I was Makayim my mitzvah. It's been a while. I'm saying Tillim all day. What's this about? And he's very depressed. One day he goes to the office. He calls his wife a half hour later. You won't believe this. What a wonderful day. Come to my office. And on my door posted outside, today I have 2 skila, 1 sreifa, 3 hereg, 4 chenek, 9 mitzvahs in one day. I never had such a great day, he tells his wife. If I would be in charge, he would be fired immediately without severance. Crazy man. Be happy to say Tehillim. This is a mitzvah, you need to be Mekayim b'shivroin lev. You need to cry when you're Mekayim this mitzvah, and be happy that you're saying Tehillim all day. And the guy says, I don't understand what the Rav says. I remember that Rambam writes in the end of Hilchas Lulav, השמחה שישמח האדם בעשייס המצווה avoida גדולה היא, וכל המונע עצמו משמחה זו ראוי להיפור ממנו. So why does the Rav say that you need to be Makayim a mitzvah with tears in your eyes? I remember that Rambam says you need to be very happy when you're Makayim a mitzvah. So what is your answer? Idiot. Depends which mitzvah. The Rambam in Hilchas Lulav talks about Lulav. Talks about Simchas Beis HaSheva. Of course you need to be happy when you say Kriya Shema. You need to be happy when you say Amei Brochas B'Kol Yom. You need to be happy by Kiddush V'Avdalta. You don't need to be happy when you're killing people. You're killing Yiddish Kindalach. It's a necessity, but it's all about the result. L'man yishmu v'yarau. Misa is a kapora for those that did terrible avedas. So there are clearly two different types of mitzvahs. Some mitzvahs are all about the result, not about the deed. And other mitzvahs are purely avodas ukeil. And now comes the big chiddush. All the mitzvahs of Seder, Hayom, Shabbos, and Moed are avodas ukeil. All the other mitzvahs are only about the result. All of them. And this is a klal gadol b'Torah. So I argue. I say, not argue. All the mitzvahs that are purely avodas Hashem belong to the routine of a Odom Miyisrael. Shigras HaChaim shel Odom Miyisrael. Because the reason we live is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The reason the world exists is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're here for one reason, Lavoid es Hashem. And therefore, all the mitzvahs shebetayra that are not about achieving a result, but about avodas ukeil, it is poshet as daylight. These mitzvahs are shigras hachayim. Either they belong to Shabbos and Yom Tov, if not, they are Seder Hayom. And therefore, all the mitzvahs that are about achieving a result depend on circumstances. All the mitzvahs that are avodas ukeil goes without saying. We don't need a posuk, we don't need proof. These are mitzvahs of shigras achayim, of the routine of a Odom Yisrael, of a Jewish person. So, either it has a shaychus with Shabbos and Yom Tov, Kiddusha v'Avdalta, Matzah v'Morer, Sukkah v'Lulav, all the others are B'Kol Yom. According to the Lechem Mishnah, Ubereches lachmacho v'esmamecho, let's go back to source number 2. Shtei mitzvahs, achas lavet es Hashem b'kol yom, shniyo levorach ekanem es Yisrael b'kol yom. How does the Rambam know that Berachas Kanem is b'kol yom? In which parsha do we find Berachas Kanem, Rabbi Isai? Which parsha in the Torah is Berachas Koyanim? What? Nasai. We don't have the Berachas lachmacho v'esmamecho. So how do we know Berachas Kanem is b'kol yom? Tefillin is b'kol yom. It's not in the Rambam, but the Kesef Mishnah Perek Kemi Yesod HaTorah. How do we know Tefillin is b'kol yom? Kshartem lo yisarudecho. The posuk doesn't say Berachas lachmacho v'esmeimecho. How do we know Tefillin b'kol yom? And I say Poshut. And not a process of elimination. If not b'kol yom, then when? B'kol yom because it is b'kol yom, not because if not. Poshet that it's b'kol yom. All the mitzvahs that are pure avodas ukeil, by their very nature, are b'kol yom v'yom, unless they're associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov. The routine, shigras hachayim shel Odom Yisrael, is a routine of avodas ukeil. That's what life is all about. And therefore, all the mitzvahs shebetayra. And this Yesod was so poshut that Chazal never saw a necessity to explain it. They thought everybody would understand that. So poshut. And that's a klal gadol b'yodi. So we don't need an explanation. How does the Rambam know that Tefillah is b'kol yom? Every mitzvah is b'kol yom if it's pure avodas ukeil. Tefillah, berachos kohanim, tefillin, and all the mitzvahs that are avodas Elokim, in essence, are routine. Routine means either Seder Hayom or Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Klal Godel b'Torah. Kach nelen is that. So today we spoke about Mitzvah Tefillah, and this mitzvah is so important. So I was 2 weeks in Chutz La'aretz now, and whenever I come back from Chutz La'aretz, I always tell you, I have a whole list. I'm going to trouble the Rosh Hashiva soon. Whenever I come back from America, I have a big list of people begging me to could you get my son into Torah's Chaim? So that is part of our kesher. So I have a long list of people just begging, get my son into Torah's Chaim. And I say, it's not part of my job description. I'm not paid by the yeshiva to get your son into Torah's Chaim, but I could try. So it is very encouraging to see how well known this yeshiva is, and there's a reason. There's a reason for that, because boys come out of the yeshiva, Baruch Hashem, with Avos Torah and Yer Shamayim and Midas Toivos. So Baruch Hashem. So in Chutz La'aretz I had a huge Harbotzas Torah, and Baruch Hashem, I thank you, Kodesh Baruch Hu, but it's always a simcha to come back to where it's a Kodesh. So I think, revive my memory if I am mistaken. I remember what I talk about, but I could no longer remember what I say, where, and when. I think the last time I was in yeshiva, did we speak about Moida Ani Lefonecho Melachai V'Kayim? Rabbi, maybe you heard it from me in 10 other places. Did I speak about that here? Yes, I did. So let me share with you an important pshat I said on the Rambam. The Rambam in the first perek of Hilchos Tefillah writes, Tefillah sa'amida. And whenever we speak about Hilchos Tefillah means Shmoyne Esrei. That is the fundamental Nusach HaTefillah. The Rambam writes, Gimel Rishonis, Shavochoy Shal Mokoim. Brochas Emtzoyos Bakoshes Tzrochim. Gimel Achoynes, Hoidoya. The source is a Gemara in Brochas Lamed Beis, but the Gemara has a slightly different formula. Gimel Rishonis Shavochoy Shal Mokoim. Emtzoyos Bakoshes Tzrochim. Achroines Ke'evet Shekibel Pras Meraboy V'niftar V'holech Lo. Like a servant that got a gift from his master and he leaves, but the Gemara doesn't say what is he supposed to say. Evet shekibel pras meraboy. So what does he say? That Rambam writes Oidoya. And that Adbaz asks, it's not right. What are the Gimel Achoynes? Hamachaz Shekhinos Elatzi, and that's not Oidoya. Moedim, that is Oidoya. Sim Shalom is once again Bakoshes Tzrochim. So how does the Rambam write Gimel Achoynes Oidoya? This is such a huge kasha, and I didn't see any reasonable teretz. I think it is Eidoya, but the special way of Eidoya that Chazal teach us. So in Megillah Chav Zayin, the Gemara says, when you get a brocha from a person, you need to say V'chein lamar. Person benched you, you need to respond in the same way, V'chein lamar. Recently, a little kid came over to me to ask for a brocha. I said, you should be a big Talmud Chacham, and he screams, V'chein lamar. I was so happy to get that brocha. Nobody ever gives me such a brocha. I just hope it'll be fulfilled someday. So that little kid, to me, Mr. Kid, says, V'chein lamar. That is the way Chazal teaches you need to respond when you get a brocha. The Ramban says in 3 different sources in Perush Ramban al Torah, Pashas V'yishlach, Pashas Kedoshim, Pashas Azinu. Hashros Hashchina b'Yisrael is a tzorech gavoa. It's not only for us. We need to be very sensitive trying to understand tzorech gavoya. Kodesh Baruch Hu has no tzorech. Kodesh Baruch Hu needs nothing. But the Ramban means to say, it is not only for us. When we are in Golus, Shchinta begaluta, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyochel is in pain when we hurt. So Ashras Hashchin is tzorech gavor, writes the Ramban. So I say, Matzmiach Keren Yeshua is for us. Bnei Yerushalayim is for us. Machzir Shechanos Letzuyin is for him. And that is our way to say V'chein Lamar. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu benches us, and we believe he benches us when we turn to him. So first, even before saying thank you, we say V'chein Lamar. HaMachazi Shechanos Letzuyin is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs, according to the Ramban. And then we say thank you. And at the end of Masechet Brochus, Chazal say, whenever we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moida ala Ova v'tzoyek ala Osid. Sim Sholem is not a bakosha, is a tza'oka ala Osid. All the brochas and tzoyos are bakoshos. And each brocha we ask for a certain thing. It's specific. Sim Sholem is about the future. So what do you want in the future? What don't we want? We want everything. Sim, Sholem, Toiva, Vrocha, Chaim, Chaim, V'chesed, V'rachamim. Not only for us, Oleinu, V'al Yisrael Amecho. That's not a bakosha, that's a tza'oka. And that is the tza'oka ala osid that comes after the moida ala avar. And that is Sim Sholem. So the Rambam is right when he writes, Gimel Achroinus is Haidoya. But Haidoya, the way Chazal teach us Haidoya. Number one, V'chein Lamar. Kodesh Baruch Hu will bench us, Amachzish Bnei Yerushalayim, Atzmiach Kein Shiur, and we say, Kodesh Baruch Hu, you shall also be redeemed. And that is Amachzish Shechinos Letzion. And then we say, Moida Manach Nilach. And then, the Tza'ok Ala Osed. Barucheinu Avonu Kalun Ke'echad B'yor Penecho, Ki B'yor Penecho Nasato Lon. That is the Tza'ok Ala Osed, Kishem Shemoida Ala Ovar. So we should always be zoiche to daven b'chol avavchem v'chol nafshechem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should answer our tefillas, and we should only share b'soides toivis, yeshuas, and achomes, and we should all be zoiche together to be as goyal tzedek, b'mheru v'yomeinu, amen. Good Shabbos.